What up? It's One Sir Grove checking in with the American people here on C4CW, casting 495 celebrities worldwide. Thanks for tuning in. If you're an actual, that is true fan of this show, I'm saying like a real fucking fan, like not a fake fan. If you're an actual fan of the show, man, we 495, man, you already know we most certainly appreciate you. So, yeah, I just invested in some new technology, man. I keep looking at the technology that I've invested in. Man, I have so much fucking technology now. It's just crazy. Like, the shit is looking like sci-fi, but it's real. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what's so fucking crazy. It's like, man, I'm in this engineering program, so I study engineering. You know, like moving parts, mechanical parts, electronics, microelectronics, molecular electronics, nanoparticles and shit, nanomaterials, material science. It's really weird, man, this future that we're in now. Because in high school, like as a rapper, artist, lyricist, musical artist, and someone who has a background in design, just like looking at designs, blueprints, schematics, wiring diagrams, flow charts, like you name it, like the whole compendium of like design and build and the craft of like engineering and art and technology like combined. Man, you know, just being a kid in America growing up in the 1970s, man, just sitting in libraries all day long, just reading books like borderline autistic type shit, because there was no fucking internet. You know, I always blog and talk about this. I always vlog, that is vlog, you know, video blog, because this podcast, if y'all didn't know, it goes to video. I just push a button and it goes to like multiple platforms, and a video is it's just a static image background. But you know, this show's been downloaded thousands of times, streamed thousands of times. I've never asked anyone to fucking listen to the podcast, so they're all organic. And yeah, man, so I often talk about that. And the reality was that all we had were books to read. And so my friends and I, who were studious and quite prodigious, you know, nerds, geeks, you know, nerd fucking power type shit. Yeah, like Stranger Things, which just, by the way, July 4th, debuted the new third season. We were a lot like that, man. In fact, interestingly enough, that could have been us, man. Yeah. So, some of y'all might think I'm joking. Some of y'all know that I'm not joking. But, look, okay, all right, so y'all want an example then. You want to see if what I'm saying, like, I got to substantiate this, right? I got to, you know, and then it's got to be corroborated. Okay, so check this out. Two things. Number one, when I was a kid, in the Pacific Northwest, before I moved to the East, my biological cousin and I, and a mutual friend of ours, we, along with some other friends, but there were like, so we'd switch out, like there would be like the three of us, and then there would be like the four of us, then there'd be like the five of us. We just alternated like our crew in terms, there were hundreds of us, because the neighborhoods that I'm from, a lot of kids, man, growing up together in this Cold War vacuum. And so we played sports, and there was a lot of camaraderie. And we were foot soldiers, because we would just like walk places. Now, naturally, like our parents had vehicles, and yes, we would steal cars like from parents, you know, relatives, and just go out and drive, you know what I'm saying? When like grandma wasn't home, kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? We take granny's car and just like roll it, you know what I'm saying? Old school, like Oldsmobile type shit, right? Or just whatever car she had at the time. So, yeah, man. So like in our community, our association, I have friends who were Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and one of my friends became like an Eagle Scout. You know what I'm saying? So we did a lot of scouting and just a lot of exploration. So there's a naval station that is said to be decommissioned. I would kind of sort of equate it to Montauk a little bit. If you want to know the name of it, it's Jim Creek Naval Research. Yeah, dude. So the call sign, if I'm not mistaken, was November Lima Kilo. That's NLK. That was the call sign. And I actually attended a school within that proximity there. And at nighttime, man, you could see, because both my parents were in the military and my mother was in the Navy. She'd been in the Army, transferred honorably into the Navy after 4 years of Army service, and she was in the Navy for the remainder of her military career. So I was at different naval installations. I grew up playing war games with military police, like as a kid, like with my cousin and our friends and I, because we had visitors at naval stations where we lived, and where my mother would work. We'd go around to these different bases. And so, like, sometimes it'd just be me, sometimes it'd be my cousin and I, sometimes it'd be others. We'd have our skateboards and shit, or one of us would. And then, we'd be out creeping around, creeping on rooftops, like scaling walls and stuff, man. And, wherever we could, like, find, like, a little alcove where we could, like, just kind of get in there and just kind of, like, work our way up to the top of some, like, building structure. And so, man, it was all about exploration with us, right? Well, I remember in my mind's eye, man, in hindsight, I remember seeing stuff on military bases, man, back in the 70s and 80s. I remember clearly what I saw on those bases. Different rooms, different, like, rooms within rooms within rooms, like underground shit, tunnel systems, like panels with instrumentation, like shit that just doesn't really seem congruent with the timeline of what's now. So, but anyway, I won't go into that right now. So back to Jim Creek. So I had lived in the Bay Area of Oakland, San Francisco, California, and we would take day trips into San Francisco. I stayed one summer out in Hayward, lived in Alameda on base at the Naval Air Station. Like the USS Nimitz was like so fucking close. Did we also have the Kitty Hawk? Hold on, let me check that out, man. Let me just pause this real quick so y'all won't even know that it paused. Hold up. So yo, I'm on this website right here. This is it's Alameda Naval Air Museum. Alameda Naval Air Museum.org. And what it's showing here are the Naval Air Station Alameda units. And looks like First Pack 1187 Fleet Intelligence Rapid Support Team Pacific, CVWR-30 Carrier Air Wing Reserve, HM-15 Blackhawks Helicopter Mine Countermeasures, HM-19 Golden Bears Helicopter Mine Countermeasures. A lot of units, man. HS-85 Golden Gators Helicopter Anti-Submarine Squadron, PATSU, that's Papa Alpha Tango Sierra Uniform PATSU-8 Patrol Service Aircraft Unit, SOSU-3 Scout and Observation Unit, VA-303 Golden Hawks Attack Squadron, VA-304 Firebirds Attack Squadron, VAQ-130 Zappers Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron, VAQ-131 Holly Greens Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron, VAQ-132 Scorpions Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron, VAQ-133 Wizards Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron, VAQ-134 Garadas Garudas. I guess it's Garudas. Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron. VAQ-135 Black Ravens. Tactical Electronics Warfare Squadron. I'm reading from a little tiny micro device. I suppose I can enlarge this. Let's see. VAQ/VA K-208 Jockeys Tactical Aerial Refueling Squadron. VAQ-VA K-308 Griffins Tactical Aerial Refueling Squadron. VAW-13 Zappers Carrier Airborne Early Warning Squadron. VMA-133 Dragons Marine Attack Squadron. VR-55 Fleet Logistics Support Squadron. VSF as in Victor Sierra Foxtrot 1 Warhawks Anti-Submarine Fighter Squadron. So I lived on this base. Obviously, there are a lot of signals like bouncing around, right? We're talking about electronic warfare. We're talking about signals emanating outward, repeaters, relays, transmitters, jammers, multiplexers, you name it, right? Microwave, infrared, X-ray, like, X-band. So you have all these signals buzzing around, right? So then at some point, I lived near the U.S.-Canada border. We're going to look this up. By the way, let me see here. USS Kitty Hawk. Let's go.
According to Wikipedia, USS Kitty Hawk, formerly CVA-63, is a supercarrier in the United States Navy.
Okay, CV-63, CVA-63, supercarrier. All right, so let's do this, and then Alameda. Let's see. Was the Kitty Hawk? Kitty Hawk Road, Alameda, California, 94501. Where is the USS Kitty Hawk now? Was the USS Kitty Hawk in Vietnam? Okay, so sure enough, right here, November 22, 1983, the aircraft, this is from UPI.com. It says, wait, hold on. So, Kitty Hawk, Alameda, United States Navy, decommissioned, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Okay, so did I see the Kitty Hawk in the Puget Sound? Because I know that I walked up to it when it was on exhibit, that is display, when it was docked at the port. It must have been in the EVT north of Seattle. Yeah, I think because it says for 10 years, Kitty Hawk was the forward deployed carrier at Yokosuka Naval Base in Yokosuka, Japan. In 2008, she was replaced in this role by George Washington. Okay, service history, 1961 to 64. All right, and then, so that's quite an extensive, what are they talking about? F-4B Phantom II, 1965 to 1972, overhauled in Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. All right, so it was the Nimitz then, where, let's see, let's go with USS Nimitz, Alameda, California. Let's get it. All right, so there it is. USS Nimitz underway from Alameda Naval Air Station. Yep, it says right here, 5 days ago, uscarriers.net. USS Nimitz, CVN 68, history. It says, quote, on June 2, the ship pulled into Naval Air Station, Alameda, California. Let's check that out. So this is from uscarriers.net. We need a proper scholarly citation here. Scanning through this data, I see Norfolk, Virginia at some point. 12 April. What year was that, though? Okay, 1975. Dry dock, Newport News. All right, let's get to Alameda. I suppose I could just, scan and find on page. But this is a micro device, and this is small. Okay, so flash forward. Damn, this is man. Man, Singapore. Wait. Here we go. Where's the first instance that I've seen here, just personally scanning through this data? Bremerton, Washington. Man, the USS Nimitz has been all over the place, man. This is gangsta. Man, the Nimitz is no joke. I mean, I knew that it wasn't and that it's not, but this in San Diego, Operation Iraqi, Jebel Ali, UAE. Man, the Nimitz is just on the move. Oh my goodness. Y'all need to go to this site and check out the extensive history of the USS Nimitz. This is amazing. Thailand and the Nimitz, Hong Kong. Nimitz has been all over the place. So let's get to USS Nimitz Dry Dock, Naval Station Everett, San Francisco. What is this? San Diego. Man, the Nimitz just kept moving, man. They had this junk all over the place. Man, they're talking about the Grey Wolves. They're talking about Bahrain. It was in Bahrain. Man. Suez Canal. Back to the Pacific Ocean. Man, this history, this is so long. Like, I'm just like, dang. Man, if there were a human, like, if there were just like one human on this vessel for every one of these missions, like, if you scroll through this, man, that person would be in Ultra G. Like, man, the fucking Nimitz was everywhere. Pretty much. Put that Joan in space, man. Oh my God. All right, so uscarriers.net shows extensive history of CVN, that's Charlie Victor, November 68, the USS Nimitz, but still, so I see. So this will actually be easier. So Naval Air Station Alameda, San Francisco. All right, so I'm on the wiki now. 37 degrees, 4710 north, 122 degrees, 1907 west. All right, had 2 runways. This is from Wikipedia history, helicopter pads, and control tower. I lived on this base, all right? So that's why we're looking at this information right here. We're talking about Treasure Island, USS Hornet, B-25s, Doolittle raid on Japan. All right, so a lot of different airfields here. It says Alameda remained an important naval base through the Cold War. From 1949 to 1953, the Navy based the Lockheed R-6V Constitution, the largest airplane ever listed on the Navy inventory at NAS. All right, so the base was also the focus for Northern California Naval Air Reserve operations after 1961. It says hosting various Reserve Force squadrons attached to Carrier Air Wing Reserve 30, CVWR-30, also known as CAG-30, CAG-30, equipped with aircraft such as C-9, Skytrain 2, KA-3, Sky Warrior, A-6 Intruder, and A-7 Corsair 2, MH-53E Sea Dragon, SH-3 King, A-4 Skyhawk, Sikorsky H-34 Seahorse, CH-53 Sea Stallion, and P-2 Neptune. Runways were lengthened for jet aircraft, and the aircraft was renamed Nimitz Field in 1967, following the death of Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz. The base was closed in 1997 pursuant to BRAC, that's B-R-A-C action. Its runways were also closed, and the airfield was not reutilized as a civilian airport. Yo, man, I used to skateboard that base. I used to jog that base. I used to play games as a kid with the military policeman and would would escape, man. The floodlights and shit. Never got fucking caught. I mean, there's a couple times when they rolled up at night and they like hit us with the light, but you know what I'm saying? They're like, hey, what are you guys doing? And then we just kind of like dip off into the shadows and just be gone. But yeah, man. It says, quote, a 2-mile freeway loop was constructed on the base for the filming of a lengthy car chase sequence for the movie The Matrix Reloaded. The loop cost over $1.5 million to construct and was also used solely for shooting the film's chase scenes, a 7-week-long process before it was demolished. The route is still visible on some aerial photography on the former 0725 and 1331 runways. Yo, man! Hey, it says since 2000, the city of Alameda has been planning for the redevelopment of the former Naval Air Station, now known as Alameda Point. Alameda Point! Oh, wow. Yo, man. So, check game. It's real interesting, man, looking back in time at this history of this base where I grew up, man, and where I used to skateboard. I used to literally walk off base with my skateboard, and then I would go under the tube because there's a tunnel. When you leave the base, like there's a tunnel right fucking there, and when you come out of the tunnel, it's like welcome to Oakland, California. I used to fucking skate through that shit. Like, you're not supposed to do that, but I did it. Like, fuck it. So there's the Webster and there's the Posey. And check game. I'm looking at it right here, man. I'm looking at it here, man, like a quarter of a century later. Webster Street and Posey Tube, Alameda, California, 94501. Man, oh, by the way, the first time I ever heard the rap artist from the Bay Area, California, San Francisco, Oakland area, the rapper named Paris. Man, Paris is a heavy hitter, man. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. And yeah, man, I heard him on the radio when I was in Oakland area at the base. Came on the radio late night. Oakland, California hip-hop rap radio station was like a real hip-hop rap radio station, man. They played real fucking music. Like California shit. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't some of this bullshit that you hear in these other cities that are supposedly fucking, supposedly hip-hop rap stations, and they just play a bunch of auto-tune fools. Just a bunch of auto ghouls. You know, just fucking stupid-ass music, and they're like, yeah, radio, yeah, DJ, hip-hop, huh? Come down to our hip-hop night, huh? Yeah, I'll be hosting. Shut the fuck up, bitch. I hate your stinking fucking ugly stupid guts. Yeah, they actually in California they had a real hip hop rap station, and that's when I heard the rapper Paris for the first time. So yeah, man, I lived in Hayward, California. Y'all can Google it. Hayward, California. Your boy Grove used to be out there in Hayward, California. I used to go up in the hills, Castro Valley, Crow Canyon. I used to work on some CrossFit training type shit, take my fucking skateboard, just go on like a 10, 15, you know what I'm saying, mile hiking shit during the day in the searing heat. You know what I'm talking about, man? Dealing with briars and everything, you know, just like fuck it, you know, just got to get trained up and shit. I like Naval Air Station Alameda, man. Alameda, man, was dope back in the 1990s. It was really fresh, man. And, yeah, I mean, the experience obviously was amazing. Being a kid, you know, growing up on military bases, going around to different bases, having a mother with top secret security clearance, seeing shit, you know, back in the 70s and 80s and 90s before security became what it is now. You know, because I used to creep around bases and shit and just, like, walk through doors. You know, like a door would be locked, but like, you know what I'm saying? I just kind of like, you know, just kind of like jiggle the knob a little bit, man, and just kind of open some doors and just walk through some shit and just see some shit. You know what I'm saying, man? Just, you know, creeping around, checking things out, seeing what I could see, you know. Man, I'd be in parts of bases where it's so weird, man. Like entire sections of bases where you wouldn't see anyone. Nothing. Like There's stuff there. I know what I saw. You know what I mean? But there would be like just like mechanical rooms, like steam rooms, like different like office spaces. I used to go through filing cabinet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was a kid growing up on bases, and I was just snooping around, just seeing what I could see and find. But I'm saying, man, you'd be like in a certain like part of the base, and it'd just be like this whole wing, this whole arm, this whole section, and there'd be no one there, man. I mean, I'm sure they had some type of like covert fucking surveillance that the public didn't know about, didn't know existed. Military, man, has always been light years ahead of mainstream society. And, you know, the whole thing is a ruse. It's all artifice. You know, people think these technologies are fucking brand new. Man, the military, they don't release anything to the public until that shit has been like battlefield tested, and they've had it for like over a decade, at least 10 years. So any technology you can think of, man, any of them that people think that they invented in the private sector, military already had that shit. Military had cameras back in the 1960s. I'm talking surveillance cameras. Video surveillance cameras back in the 1960s. The internet was created back in the 1960s that humans were told about. You know what I mean? Like, that's what humans were told. I mean, the military had those technologies before even then. That's when the military decided to tell the public that those technologies exist and existed. So that's how it works, man. So I saw some shit. I saw some computers and some different instrument panels and some weird shit back in the 1970s and 80s. And I've been to some different secure locations, man. And, you know, back then, man, if someone had a top secret security clearance, they would have sometimes they'd bring like their kid to work. And like, they'd be like, hey, you want to play around on this computer? And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. You know, because they think kids can't like get into anything back then. You know what I'm talking about? So, you know, little did they know, you know? So, but yeah. So let's take a look at Naval Facility Jim Creek.
Arlington, here you go.
Jim Creek. Right here. Naval Radio Station Jim Creek. So, there is a Wikipedia section here, and it says Oso, Washington. Oso? What the fuck? Hold on, man. County of, okay. 48 degrees, 16, 20 north, 121, 55, 9 west. Okay, it says area 3.7 square miles, 3.6 square miles for land, water 0.1 square miles, elevation 207 feet, population 180, geography. It says Oso is located along the Still-Quamish River North Fork, which forms a valley between several arms of the Cascade Range. The community is accessible via State Route 530, which continues 12 miles, 19 kilometers west to Arlington, and 16 miles, 26 kilometers east to Darrington. Okay, all right, so if I recall correctly, that seems correct and plausible. I'm just taking into account the Mandela effect. Things have been altered. So there were 96 households, out of which 37.5% had children under the age of 18. At nighttime, depending on where one was within proximity to Jim Creek, you could see, like, one could see in the distance these, like, this glimmer, like these shimmering, glimmering, like, lights, like, in the dark night sky. So it's like, you'd be like, yo, what is that? Like, because it wasn't like a skyline where you could clearly see, like towers, right? It was obfuscated, and the view was obscured because of the way they had Jim Creek situated and hidden behind the tree line. So like, but you would see these like lights flickering, and you'd be like, man, what the fuck is that? And then people in the area, they're like, yo, that's Jim Creek. Oh, Jim Creek. Like, what's that Jim Creek? Like, what do they do there? And they're like, we don't really know. So we're going to investigate. Okay, so Wikipedia goes on to say, the station was listed as a potential target for a Russian attack by a state media report in 2019. All right, so that lets you know right there that the facility was on Russian radar. So obviously in this area, this other state, this other part of the country where I used to live, this base here that I could see, that's how fucking close I was to it. I could see the base at nighttime, right? When my friends and I would go out and we'd be like sneaking around. You couldn't get to the base because obviously it's highly secured. And also it was off in the distance. So it's not like you could even just like roll by it. Like it's tucked away, right? So it goes on to say, Jim Creek Naval Radio Station is a United States Navy very low frequency VLF radio transmitter facility at Jim Creek near Oso, Washington. The primary mission of this site is to communicate orders one way to submerged submarines of the Pacific Fleet. Established in 1953, the transmitter radiates on a 24.8 kilohertz. Established in 1953, the transmitter radiates on 24.8 kilohertz with a power of 1.2 megawatts and a call sign of NLK, November Lima Kilo, and is one of the most powerful transmitters in the world. Located near Arlington, Washington, in the foothills of the Cascades, that's where aliens are often seen and spotted navigating Starcraft. I'm just saying, man, like, the CIA even said that shit in what is now declassified documents that can be viewed online. All right. So aliens in the Cascades, flying ships, like their own aircraft, their own spacecrafts, right? Obviously, they're picking up on human signals in and around this area that I'm referring to here, because this is one of the most powerful transmitters in the world. And NLK, that is call sign NLK, Jim Creek, one of its purposes, it says its primary purpose function. I mean, shit, I take that as a grain of salt. I'm sure there's some other shit going on there that might actually be more primary. This communicating with like submarines, that might be secondary, tertiary, shit. Government says one thing while it's doing other shit. At any rate, located near Arlington, Washington, in the foothills of the Cascades. Keep in mind, Cascades are where aliens have been seen by many countless individuals on record. Pilots. It's on file with CIA. You can read about it in the Crest files. They've been seen in the Cascades, man. Flying over Mount Rainier, flying over the Cascades, flying over Mount Baker, just fucking flying in Washington State, right there in the Puget Sound near the fucking Pacific Ocean, man. Ring of fire. A lot of electromagnetic energy there. All right, and a lot of military and human military signals, communications from military bases for defense and intelligence. Of course the aliens want to pick up on that data. And plus, they live out there. You know what I'm saying? They stay up there in the Cascades, man. They have bases out there and shit. Man, we're not dumb. We know, man, we know that in remote parts of the country and in mountain ranges, some of the tallest mountain ranges in the Western Hemisphere, of course aliens are out there. They're in the mountains and they're in the Pacific. Covert shit. and they're watching what humans do. So it says here, much of the site is devoted to the enormous overhead wire antenna array that is necessary to efficiently radiate the VLF waves. The antenna shown above consists of 10 catenary cables, 5,640 to 8,700 feet. That's 1,719 to 2,652 meters, which is 1.1 to 1.6 miles long, suspended on 12 200-foot towers overlooking the valley between Wheeler Mountain and Blue Mountain in a zigzag pattern. So you know that already sounds like some HARP shit. That already sounds like the HARP program in Alaska on some level. You know what I'm saying? This is a massive facility that we're talking about here. Quote, each cable receives energy from a vertical cable attached at the center, which drops down to the valley floor, where it is fed by one of 2 bus transmission lines, which extend along the valley from the transmitter building in the center. This type of antenna, called a valley span antenna, functions as a capacitively top-loaded, electrically short monopole antenna. Imagine you're in like science class back in 1970s, 1980s, right? You're in high school. Okay, imagine that you have information from the future because you're a remote viewer, right? So you remote viewed some data, you saw some shit in a dream and you wrote it down. And you went to school the next day and you're like, teacher, I have a question. And your science teacher's like, yes. You're like, have you ever heard of a capacitively top-loaded electrically short monopole antenna? You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on, man. This base for the time and even for now was no like regular, just like base. Okay? This is to communicate some shit that's highly classified. All right? And has multi-purpose, like dual functionality. So let's continue. Quote, the vertical cables are the main radiating elements, and the horizontal cables serve to add capacitance to the top of the antenna to increase the power radiated. The antenna is divided into 2 sections of 5 elements, each fed with its own transmission line. These normally operate together as one antenna, but can operate separately, so one section can be shut down for maintenance without interrupting transmission. So this is uninterruptible. Think about it. This is uninterruptible, continuous wave communications that are taking place here. They have this wired up so that it keeps operating regardless. Okay. Quote, the floor of the valley under the antenna is covered with a network of cables. Man, imagine that shit. The floor of the valley, we're talking like physical terrain. The floor of the valley under the antenna is covered with a network of cables suspended a few feet above the ground. What? Come on, man. Which functions as a counterpoise ground system. So let's peep that real quick. It says right here, counterpoise ground system, similar to a counterpoise at base of mast antenna of AM radio station KTBS diagram. There's the diagram. It says, quote, used in Lodge Muirhead wireless system around 1900. In electronics and also radio communication, a counterpoise is a network of suspended horizontal wires or cables or a metal screen used as a substitute for an earth-ground connection in a radio antenna center. Okay? It says that the counterpoise evolved with the Marconi monopole antenna in the 1890s, the first decade of radio in the wireless telegraphy era, but it was particularly advocated by British radio operator Oliver Lodge and patented by his associate Alexander Muirhead in 1907. How it works. All right. So it says, counterpoises are typically used in antenna systems for radio transmitters where a good earth-ground connection cannot be constructed. All right. Monopole antennas used at low frequencies, such as the mast radiator antennas used for AM broadcasting, require the radio transmitter to be electrically connected to the earth under the antenna. This is called a ground, or earth. The ground must have a low electrical resistance because any resistance in the ground connection will dissipate power from the transmitter. Low resistance grounds for radio transmitters are normally constructed of a network of cables buried in the earth. However, in areas with dry, sandy, or rocky soil, the ground has a high resistance, so a low resistance ground connection cannot be made. In these cases, a counterpoise is used. Another circumstance in which a counterpoise is used is when earth for a buried ground under the antenna mast is not available, such as in antennas located in a city or atop of a tall building. And then it goes on to say, a common design for a counterpoise is a series of radial wires suspended a few feet above the ground, extending from the base of the antenna in all directions in a star pattern connected at the center. The counterpoise functions as one plate of a large capacitor with the conductive layers in the earth as the other plate. Since the radio frequency alternating currents from the transmitter can pass through a capacitor, the counterpoise functions as a low-resistance ground connection. There should not be any closed loops in the wires of a counterpoise system, as the strong fields of the antenna will induce circular currents in which will dissipate transmitter power. So they've got this all hooked up down the street from where I used to live. All right, and this is crazy. And this became a target of the Russians. So I lived in an area that was targeted by the Russians, which all of America was, but this particular facility apparently was targeted. So let's see. Talk about resource management and when the Navy purchased the rights to the land. Naval Communication Station. Okay, that's a different station. They don't actually... There isn't much information on Wikipedia about Jim Creek. Wait, hold up. Naval history, Spanish, wildfire, population density, age distribution. Okay, now they're talking about the town. We want to find information. Okay, so this is Navy Life, PNW, 2017. It says 27 July 2017, quote, and the source is Navy Life, PNW, as in Pacific Northwest.com. So our scholarly citation is basically, we're going to go right here. All right, two quotes. It says, quote, the Jim Creek Navy installation, secluded in the Cascade Mountains of Washington, is located 55 miles northeast of Seattle. All right. And then the other scholarly citation here is in the very beginning. Quote, when Naval Radio Station Jim Creek was dedicated in 1953, it was recognized as the most powerful radio station in the world. Wow. Okay. So the most powerful radio station in the world. Now check this out. Navy Times. Navy Times says, this is March 2. This is 2 March 2019. It says, they asked the question, is Jim Creek in Moscow's crosshairs? Wow. So Moscow has been concerned about this base for some time. I've seen the layout of the base, if you guys want to know. Like, I've seen the declassified documents where they have shown the interior of some of the different spaces within the facility, and what it depicts are rows and banks of computers. So there are a lot of computers inside Jim Creek at the time, and I'm reading Navy Times right here. I mean, man, how many rap artists do this type of research that we do here? You know, how many rap artists that you know of actually carry out this type of extensive, comprehensive, scholarly research on topics such as military bases, facilities, installations, military, government, fortresses, government warehouses, secret bases, above ground, below ground, subterranean, information warfare, electronic warfare, military, defense, intelligence, science. I mean, come on, man. We're covering a broad range of topics here, and you'll probably never get that from any auto-tune rapper on this planet. Like, they probably will just never do what we do. You know, they're unoriginal, and they don't know about Jim Creek. Like, they don't have any care in the world because they're consumers, and they don't need to know this type of shit, man, and they don't give a fuck about any of it. You know what I mean? They're just in la-la land, just living in bliss, like, with their auto-tune voice. So, voices. So right here at NavyTimes.com, quote, Seattle, a Russian state television broadcaster asserts that one of his country's top targets for attack in the event of nuclear war would be a 4,700-acre site east of Arlington that encompasses a key transmission center for the Pacific submarine fleet and a forested recreational area for military personnel. Wow. Man, imagine that shit. So, there's even more information from the heraldnet.com. Heraldnet.com, quote, Russia says this valley near Arlington is a nuclear target. So, come on, man. Wow. Fucking wow. I used to play around there, man, as a kid. I used to creep around that area with my friends, man. You couldn't get to the base. It's like Area 51. But unlike Area 51, you could see the towers in the distance shimmering, like flickering lights at nighttime. It looked like aerial phenomena, but when it was a little bit clearer, you could see some type of like physical tower structure. Towers, not like one, but like a whole sky filled with these like towers, this like row of towers. So you want to do some intelligence gathering with me? Once Grove, y'all want to do some military intelligence gathering with me? I'm talking about gathering intelligence about military intelligence. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about as civilians. And I'm not talking about anything illegal, man. We're not violating any kind of laws or anything like that. I'm not directing any one of you to do anything that is illegal. This is for educational purposes only. Information, infotainment, edutainment purposes only. I can't give any kind of business or legal advice. Look, I'm talking about using open source information to explore further and deeper this topic of Jim Creek. Okay, so now look, check game. If you go to YouTube, there's a video called Naval Radio Station Jim Creek. Okay, again, Naval Radio Station Jim Creek. Right now, if you've gotten this far into this podcast, if you're a true fan, you already know using open source information that's just open source, public domain info. We are gathering, that is collecting, that is researching and analyzing intelligence information that's open source. We are gathering, collecting, researching, analyzing military intelligence information. This is an obscure, esoteric, arcane topic. You already know there's not another podcast in the world that's gone this deep into and down the rabbit hole. Like, straight up, man, I've listened to all the shit. Art Bell, Coast to Coast. Come on, man, I've listened to so much Fringe and, like, Beyond Fringe and, like, Over the Horizon Space-Time. Like, right now, today, at this very moment, who's looked at as much information in the public sector regarding the topic of Jim Creek and Alameda Naval Air Station, two different bases, two different mega bases, right? That served and have served a major purpose in U.S. military defense. Okay, on the same fucking day in the same goddamn podcast. No one on the planet. All right, and we're not just looking at it, man, on the surface level. We're checking it out forensically. So look, Naval Radio Station Jim Creek, YouTube it. Pops up with this video. Some dickhead gave it a thumbs down. Don't know why that. Probably a Russian, right? So I'm just saying, probably like a Russian military commander is like, thumbs down, right? So it says right here, this is Lieutenant Gregory Carter. Got to pause. I'm looking at him sitting in this room. He's wearing his military uniform, camouflage. And I'm paused at 46 seconds. And it says Naval Radio Station Jim Creek, officer in charge. So we're looking at the officer in charge at the time of this video. When was this uploaded? 22 August 2013. And it was published by the U.S. Navy, by the way. And it says, quote, Arlington, Washington, 12 August 2013, Lieutenant Gregory Carter, the officer in charge of Naval Radio Station Jim Creek, talks about the rich history and current operations of the 60-year-old radio station. Really? That's really fucking weird. You know why? Because, dude, in the early 2000s, when was this? When did I say? I just put this device to the side. 2013? Wow. What a coincidence. Because on another motherfucking timeline, that is in the early 2000s, in the late 1990s, guess what the fuck I was told by people in the motherfucking U.S. military? That Jim Creek was shut the fuck down and that it doesn't and didn't exist any motherfucking more. Wow, that's fucking strange because that's what I was told many different times and what I heard from many different individuals, that the base was fucking decommissioned. Wow, I'm pretty sure that those reliable military sources were not mistaken. I'm pretty sure what they fucking told me was in fact true. Flash forward to the Mandela effect. Apparently, man, on this timeline, Jim Creek is still motherfucking operational and is some type of nuclear target. What? Come on, man. You know what I'm telling you is fucking true. Alright, so check this out, man. I just watched the whole video. I paused the podcast and I just watched the whole video. Alright, so he goes on, Lieutenant Gregory Carter. This video's 2 minutes long, right? He gives a pretty candid presentation and he describes the base in terms that he's allowed to describe the base. And I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about what I'm talking about to watch that video. It's only 2 fucking minutes long and it shows you some shit. But I'm going to say this, man. This is what a lot of cats don't know. I've seen the fucking schematics for that shit. And I've seen those interior spaces and what was really fucking there. So seeing that information and then seeing in contrast this little 2-minute US Navy video, come on, man. In this 2-minute fucking video, they show you like some topical data. Like they show you some shit that's like not even shit. You know what I'm saying? Man, they make it look. What they make it look like is they make it look like some old coaxial, like cable, like twisted copper pair type shit. Like, yeah, there's a little recreational facility that's available. You like, I mean, he's obviously a stand-up dude. Like, he's doing his job, right? And I'm not mocking him. I'm just saying that, like, regardless of who would have done the presentation, The U.S. Navy as a whole is what I'm saying. They're like, yeah, so, there's a little recreational area where you can see like a diorama of like, the larger facility and, its rich history and this and that, right? Man, there's a little exhibit where they show some different transmission lines, some little like cutaways, basically like some of the different cables, the different types of materials that were used to carry those signals. They've been truncated, right? Like trunk lines, they've been cut off, and then they're on display inside this little museum that they have, right? The way they make that shit look, man, they make it look like it's this little like makeshift base with these like cables extending from like point A to point B to point C, right? And it just kind of looks like a little substation. That's the way they make it look in this presentation. They make it look like it's kind of like you just drive by a substation, man, and you see some transmission lines like in the distance, like, oh yeah, those are transmission lines carrying like electrical current and like energy, right? That's how they make it look, dude. That's not Jim Creek. That's that's like the surface data. That's all they show you is a little valley with some superstructures of like, some towers where, cables connect and then they like interconnect to like other towers and cables and shit. They don't show you the real shit, man. Man, through declassified information, you can find documents that actually show you what Jim Creek looks like inside. And that shit looks like the National Security Agency. That shit, they have fucking supercomputers in there. I've seen the data. They have rows and rows and rows and banks and banks and banks of computers. And these little piece of shit fucking computers that they show you in this presentation, these old rickety fucking old school ENIAC looking like computers and shit, like out of like some old 1960s like sci-fi movie, right? Some panels with some little glowing lights and shit, man. Come on, man. I've seen the shit. And what they're showing you in this presentation is a mere speck of what the fuck was really there. Now, we need to figure out why on one timeline at any time in space-time it was said that Jim Creek was closed. And how now, given Mandela effect, micro changes in the multiverse universe, somehow it's still open and still fully motherfucking operational, just like Montauk. Yo, by the way, man, this might sound kind of outrageous, but while I'm doing this research, have y'all seen the Slick Rick Can't Dance to a Track That Ain't No Good Soul Midas Touch? I just said Slick Rick Can't Dance to a Track That Ain't Got No Soul Midas Touch. If you type Slick Rick Can't Dance to a Track That Ain't Got No Soul / Midas Touch, man, Slick Rick the Ruler, man, that man is, rocking some jewelry, man. Like, dang, he got the purple with the purple eye patch, and he got some like platinum, it was silver, platinum, gold, like, man, some ropes and shit. And that cat went all out. Like, what? Slick Rick is back with the new track. Yo, this gold and like platinum and like whatever types of like jewels those are, man, that shit is just like, man, that cat is doing it big. Man, Slick Rick has been around now, man, forever. This cat is representative of real hip hop rap and longevity in the industry. Shout outs to Slick Rick the Ruler. Y'all are probably like, yo, you went from talking about Montauk in relation that is connection to Jim Creek on the opposite coast to talking about Slick Rick the Ruler. And I'm like, yes, I did. So, yo, man, check it out. Check this out. So if you go to navy-radio.com, give me one moment here. All right, URL copied. I'm going to give you all the exact URL. Just bear with me one moment here. All right, I got the URL for y'all. I have the URL for y'all. So if you go to www.navy-radio.com /Comsta. That's COMM. So Charlie, Oscar, Michael, Sierra Tango Alpha. That again is www.navy-radio.com /COMMSTA. Again, C as in Charlie, O, Oscar, Michael, Sierra, Tango, Alpha. Again, www.navy-radio.com /COMMSTA /Jim Creek, JIMCREEK .HTM. Okay? Bring up that link. Let's go. All right? And then show and simplified view here. You can read and see images in terms of the interior of this facility and what's really there, and then take that information and go back and watch that 2-minute long presentation with the lieutenant on YouTube, and based on his presentation, the Navy's presentation, yeah, you can leave some comments on the page, man, and let me know what you think if you feel like it. Yeah, man, I'm saying in that little 2-minute presentation, they didn't even really, man, show a fraction of what's actually at this facility. You can read about the facility in depth and see photos, and you can click on the different links and it will show, let's see, they have links here to different third-party sites. You can see the interior that accordingly was built by RCA. That is the company RCA. And you can see how massive it is in scope. And again, compare and contrast with what the lieutenant talks about and shows in that little 2-minute presentation. And then if you scroll down here, it says, one moment. So as someone who is in a university electrical engineering program, I encourage you to read this entire article, this entire piece, this entire page of information on Jim Creek at navy-radio.com, because this reads like something out of a science fiction book. This is a great read. You can see how extensive, you can read how massive in scope this project was and is currently to this day. Because again, Jim Creek was shut down. It was decommissioned. And I remember when it happened, but apparently in the Mandela effect, it never was here. So just saying. So, if you're interested in topics such as the National Security Agency, Area 51, government bases, installations, secret and unclassified, man, you definitely got to read this here. There's a whole piece. This whole piece on Jim Creek. Got to check it out, man. Got to read it. There's massive information here. This thing is massive in scope. I just saw a video on YouTube yesterday about the moon and the bases on the moon that were built by ancient advanced civilizations, and how the moon is it's basically an artificial satellite that is used to position the Earth in such a way to offset any type of rotation of the Earth. It's basically buoyed to the moon is buoyed in place to balance perfectly the Earth with its spin for the subsistence that is furtherance of life on this planet, and how the moon was set up in such a way and that it's hollow, and it's been known forever that it's a shell. And that's why if you look at the That's why if you look at the so-called like meteor impacts on the moon, they're not very deep, because whenever these very large objects come into contact with the moon, the impacts are not very deep, which doesn't make any sense other than to suggest, and we now know, and we have forever, technically, that it's a hollow shell, and inside is some type of advanced civilization, machinery, computers, aliens. As crazy as it sounds, NASA in unclassified, that is declassified now, documents, you can see what NASA sees. NASA's let some of the cat out the bag. So you can see aerial vehicles actually transiting, that is traversing the landscape of, I'm talking about luminal, like intelligently, superluminal, intelligently driven spacecraft. You can see spacecrafts moving along the surface of the moon. You can see billows of smoke, as if there are some type of like factories, like nuclear power plants on the moon. So the moon is like the Death Star from Star Wars. And quite frankly, that's probably where Lucas got it, because Lucas is well read and he probably knows. In fact, they use that as an example in the presentation. So the moon is not what we were told it was. It just can't be. And there are very large bodies of information on the subject. And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the bases, the ancient bases and ancient cities and ancient facilities on the moon, and Mars, and other planets that were hidden from us previously because the system didn't want for us to think about such things, because it just wanted for us to work and pay our fucking taxes, right? So now that we know this shit, which our government has always known, you can look at Jim Creek as a facility, and you can compare and contrast it to facilities that were built on the moon and Mars, and how massive Jim Creek as a facility is, how much time, how many years it took, the amount of money that they put into it, when it started, when it was in its infancy, over many decades, generations to now. And you already know, man, you should already fucking know and be able to infer and deduce, surmise and ascertain that those old ass computers that they show you, they've been swapped out with the fucking most leading edge, bleeding edge, cutting edge, state of the art, beyond the horizon of space-time technology, man. They're not going to be using some old antiquated fucking piece of shit computers at Jim Creek. Fuck no, man. If they're communicating with naval submarines in the Pacific Fleet and other whatever it is that's being communicated there. I mean, in this article, man, at the website that I gave you, it talks about how around the entire base itself, there's a field of energy. Keep in mind, this was the largest, it was the most powerful base of its type, class, and kind on the planet at some point. And the Russians decided that it would be designated as a nuclear target. With that being said, when you see the little 2-minute presentation, yeah, there's a little fucking recreational facility. Yeah, we're like military families and their dependents and, veterans and such. They have access to go to this like little wildlife preserve, little trail shit, little fucking kind of like little resort, if you will, this little hiking trail thing. Yeah, dude, you can fucking go there, but they're not going to let you see shit. So, check this out. Even more to my point. So they use the little thing where you can go with your family if you're a military family, if you're a dependent and you have a military dependent card, if you have access to the base and you're able to go and see the little house that they have with the little museum shit, right? Okay? That way, anybody who's in and around that area, who is military, who's a dependent of a military family, and who has access to go and see that little fucking museum, you know, the little history shit of Jim Creek as it's presented to those who have the opportunity to see it, you can then go on the Facebook page and you can talk about, yeah, I was at Jim Creek and I went to the little museum and this and that, right? So that way it seems like people like are familiar with it, right? That's the whole deception, is that I'm just saying that's the whole design. Those are countermeasures, because then people think of it like, oh, it's totally innocuous. Yeah, it's just all it is. It's just a place where, like, you know, they talk the submarines in the Pacific. You know, it's just a little hill valley, you know, thing with some little lines and cables and such that kind of like go through there, and it's just like telephone poles, right? Oh my God, our government is really amazing. It's interesting. You already know, man. You should already fucking know. There's other shit there. It's not just goddamn fucking Jim Creek. There's other shit at that fucking base, man. Okay? And what they're presenting to you in open source isn't the fucking whole shit. Why would it fucking be? I mean, man, our government isn't just gonna let some shit sit there and have it open so that people could just like walk up in that shit. Okay? And whenever the government has a base somewhere and they tell you this is the primary purpose, this is what the base is for, you should already know that there's other highly classified shit there. Okay? So let's get into it. So this is the kind of stuff they don't teach you in classrooms unless you work in government. And unless you're let in on these compartmentalized programs, special access programs, deep black, unacknowledged special access programs. All right? Unacknowledged special access programs. USAPs, right? Unacknowledged special access programs. USAP. USAP. Black, deep black, unacknowledged. So these deep black projects that are unacknowledged. You hear about Jim Creek. You don't really know much about it. If you're civilian, you might have heard something about it, but you still don't really probably know much about it until you read about it, until you do the research, until you start to become a subject matter expert. You start to do the research, you start to do the analysis, and then you have a picture of this base facility that is in the Cascade Mountains, wherein classified communications takes place. Same as NSA, same as CIA, same as Area 51, Groom Lake, S4, where they're working on projects. Our government works on secret projects. Yeah, you know a little bit on the surface. Yeah, you know a little fractional, topical, like piece of data here and there, right? They don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to think about what's really going on there, because they want you to pay taxes, and they want for you to work and pay taxes, and they want for you to work and pay taxes, and to not look over here, not look over there. Don't think about it. What they don't talk about, man, is down the street is the Yakima Firing Center. The Yakima Firing Center. The Yakima Firing Center on the other side of the state in eastern Washington. Ground to earth station. I know people who have been there because I grew up in a military family, and I know what's there. And I'm not going to go into great detail about what is there, because you can look it up and you can do the research. So what you find is that there are many different bases and installations in that area. Many secret bases, even just down the street from Jim Creek. There are bases all over the Pacific Northwest. Washington, Idaho, Montana, Northern California, Oregon, all over that region. Many different secret bases, installations above and below ground. Too many to fucking list, man. I mean, just like a list that just goes on like a telephone directory. And the story that we were told is that, well, that's so that America will never again be attacked by Japan. I mean, dude. Yeah, that's what I said. And that's what we were told when we were kids, that the reason for that massive military presence is so that America can defend itself against Japan in the event that Japan becomes hostile again. I mean, come on, man. Do you know how many fucking bases are on the West Coast? Just base, like, do you know how many military bases there are on the West Coast? Okay, like, let's imagine that we're aliens and we're looking at Earth through the alien lens, like through the lens of an alien, through an alien lens with our alien optics, right? And we're analyzing Earth. We're looking at Earth and we need to know what the fuck is on this rock, what all is here. We have our arrays of sensors and scanners and detectors and probes and information intelligence gathering technologies from another star system, right? So we can't just scan the surface of the Earth. We can't just send out probes and invisible micro drones to collect all the data. No, we have to create our own lookalike humans and put those humanoid entities inside the nexus of humanity and get underground and get into these different areas that are secured to find out what the fuck is really here on this planet, right? I'm talking like genetic, like manipulation, like creating our own clones and shit, cloning motherfuckers of our own so that we can infiltrate society and humanity to see what's beneath the earth in these underground subterranean bases, right? We need to have our optics inside the matrix of humanity to see what's really fucking here on this rock. Because if some other alien group created Earth and humans, right? And on the surface, it all looks like one thing, but there's some shit that's hidden below that's millions of eons old, zillions of eons old, right? We need to find out what that is. Because on the surface, it's all just distraction, deflection, disguise, camouflage for what's really beneath, right? So in order to do that, we have to create entities that look like humans. And we have to send those of our own into the human matrix and infiltrate it. I'm just saying that's how aliens might think. If they're interested, if they even give a fuck about what's here. Just like when we look at the moon, we can see, we know the moon ain't what we were told it was. And now we're sending up rockets and spaceships and all this kind of shit to figure out what the fucking moon is, to take samples of like the moon. The moon is obviously not some naturally occurring rock in space. It was built, it was designed, and we're trying to figure out what the fuck it is. What's inside? What's in it? We know when we've gone up before, right? We know what the astronauts say. They're like, yeah, there are others here. They're watching us. We have others in the distance standing right there looking at us. Yeah, the domes, the cities, the towers, the power plants. Yep, they were waiting for us. So, okay. Well, those other entities that are on the moon, are they the ones that created the moon? Or are they just like us? Are they also explorers trying to figure out what the fuck the moon is? As a superstructure, as a megastructure, as a megastructure. Are they trying to figure out what the fuck it is? And they're just kind of like, oh, look, hey, we're aliens, and look, some other aliens showed up on this rock. And apparently they're here to like do some exploring too. Figure out what this fucking thing is and how it came here some eons ago. All right? So that's the point. So what's that Montauk? Well, you have all these bases everywhere that are hidden from human society, like in the background of our reality, right? They're just like off in the distance over that tree line down in that little ridge canyon valley, right? Or buried beneath that, into the wall of that, that mountain over there, just go through that granite rock and somehow, some way within there's built this fucking facility, this base, right? Those things are hidden from most of mainstream society. So what's at Montauk in New York? Let's check it out and see how it relates to Jim Creek and other such facilities like the Yakima Firing Center right down the street, more or less few hours down the street from Jim Creek. All right, so here we go. The Montauk Project. We're talking about Montauk, New York. Montauk, similar to Jim Creek, a base involved in, that is, signals, right? So it says here, if you want to know where Montauk is located, it says zip code 11954 right here. It says Montauk, New York is a village at the east end of the Long Island Peninsula. It's known for its beaches, like ditch plains, with its strong Atlantic surf. At the peninsula's tip, Montauk Point State Park. So again, Montauk Point State Park is home to the 1796 Montauk Point Lighthouse. A museum in the Keeper's House displays historical documents signed by George Washington. Camp Hero State Park, once a military base, has World War II bunkers and a radar tower. All right, so that's census designated, a place in New York, right here. And then someone asked this question on wikitravel.org. Why do they call Montauk the end of the world? Quote, Montauk is known by many Long Island residents as the end. This is because it is the easternmost point of the island and New York State. Montauk has a rich history. It is named after the Native American Montaukett tribe that fished, hunted, raised cattle, and lived on the land. That's really interesting, because what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at Montauk projects. In other words, Montauk base, Camp Hero base projects conducted by our U.S. military. From Wikipedia, The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time by preston-nichols and Peter Moon is the first book in a series detailing supposed time travel experiments at the Montauk Air Force Base at the eastern tip of Long Island as part of the Montauk Project. Sounds a little like Stranger Things. So it goes on to say, let's see. Sky Books is the publisher. 1992 is the publication date. 156 pages. Dewey Decimal 133.820. ISBN 0-9631889-0-9. Quote, the 1992 book and its follow-up books are written in a first-person style and has been classified as science fiction. The real photographs of the base and crude drawings of the project electronics in the book contributes to the authentic feel, prompting the project to assume a cult status whereby websites declare it is true or false. Using a time travel theme, the characters alter history with visits to Jesus Christ, as well as altering the outcome of Civil War and World War II battles. Has anyone ever heard of andrew-d-basiago? I've heard his name pronounced differently. It's like Bravo, Alpha, Sierra, India, Alpha, Golf, Oscar. Let's look that up real quick. Let's make sure that we're spelling things correctly here. Oh, there's Slick Rick the Ruler again, coming right up there. Let's just go ahead and take a look at this here Mr. Andrew, and see how his name is pronounced correctly. B-A-S-I. Okay. G-O. Okay. 2020. Looks like he ran for president. Is he running for president? Let's see. Participation in DARPA. Andrew-d-basiago. However, that is pronounced because people pronounce it differently depending on the presenter. And shows Andy2020.net. What's this here? Project Pegasus. 2018. Project Pegasus. Okay, so there's a website about some type of project known as Project Pegasus. I'm pretending like I don't know about Project Pegasus, by the way. So let's see. Okay, so there's a wiki piece. It says participation in DARPA experiments. He began telling the story that he had been a child participant in a top secret DARPA program experimenting with time travel and teleportation in the early 1970s. These technologies were, of course, invented by none other than Nikola Tesla. Basiago claims to have traveled 1 million years into the past, as well as having been present at Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and having visited 2045. He revealed all this in numerous interviews with Coast to Coast. Travel to Mars. He claims to have teleported to Mars in the 1980s as an Earth ambassador to the Martian civilization. Huh. Interesting. It says that Basiago, okay, it says he claims that President Obama was a fellow Mars traveler back in the day, then living under the moniker Barry Soetoro, or however you pronounce that. Okay, Basiago and Stilling say they met Obama on Mars, and the government is now covering up the president's space travel past. Well, it would make sense because if you're a chrononaut, that is, if you're a time traveler, and you're from another Earth universe, and you've been crisscrossing the multiverse for DARPA and CIA as part of some type of time exploration program, where there are supercomputers and quantum qubit computers that are altering time somehow, because these projects are to manipulate and alter different events in human history and time. And then you end up here, and as a doppelganger, you have an opportunity to attend Harvard University and then become the president, and you have some future knowledge, some intel from another Earth universe timeline. You could very well deceive and manipulate the human population and get them to vote for you, and then you can become president by telling them that everyone will have access to some type of universal health care, because you know that they'll fall for that because it's happened before, and you know the script, and you know how to do it, and you know how to become one of the world's most powerful men. And then, of course, all of your information records, everything are sealed, and then no one really knows the truth because you're actually a time traveler who's come here for what was supposed to be a hyperspace reconnaissance mission, and then you went rogue. Interesting. So Andrew Basiago says that, according to this information, says essentially that he's a time traveler, which is the same as a chrononaut, and that Barack Obama was involved in that project. You know, the one thing that I find interesting about when Jesse Ventura on his TV show where they investigate, they went to Andrew Basiago's neighborhood, his childhood home, and Andrew accompanied Jesse Ventura. The woman who answers the door, she she seems in disbelief when Andrew tells her the story of his childhood and how he grew up in that home that she apparently supposedly lives in now. And she has this look on her face as if she doesn't believe him. And she's saying, well, how can that even be possible? You know, basically, like, you know, we've lived here for as long as we have. And he explains the entire layout of the home and where he was in relation to this, and that, and his childhood, and that he was part of an experiment in time travel. And at the beginning, it looks like, you know, she's basically almost kind of like mocking him. She's like kind of like, you know, like mocking, right? She's just kind of like condescending and kind of like scoffing and mocking, like, okay, so you were a kid that was in you had a security clearance, you were a child in a government like program, and she seems like incredulous at first, right? Yeah, that's at first, until you find out, man, until it's revealed that she's actually with the Department of Defense. She's actually with DOD. So when I saw that, I was like, you know what, man? They knew he was coming back to his childhood home on a different timeline. Like, they knew he would at some point return to his to his childhood home on another different timeline. And they had her like a sentinel, as you would see in like La Femme Nikita, the world of like La Femme Nikita. They basically had someone posted there for his return. And basically they deny him like access to his childhood home. That when I saw that, I was like, right. So people are saying, some of them, that they don't believe his story, but I think there's something to his story. And I believe the story. I know it sounds crazy for some people to accept that and understand that, but there's something to it. And when she, again, at the beginning, was, in my opinion, in hindsight, pretending as if what he was saying was ludicrous, it's later discovered that she herself, in my opinion, is basically a plant. She's Department of Defense, because she's like, oh, the military, like, oh, DOD, like, oh, and you're a kid with like a top secret security clearance? Like, really? Like, that's an interesting story, guy. As it turns out, she's DOD herself, and he's denied access to the property. That's just really interesting. Why would the government of this timeline, knowing that he's a time traveler, that he has knowledge of other Americas, why would they not want for him to visit the inside of his child home? What's there? What do they know? There's something to it, man. Like, I've heard his accounts, like I've heard his stories, and the information that he presents is really interesting. And get this, happens to be in Washington State. So, connection, parallel, Washington State. So, some people have said that the Greys that are visiting us, the reason is that they're us in the future. And they've come back in time. Because this multiverse, these worlds have opened in such a way that time travel became a reality at some point in our future. They are us, and they've come back here for reconnaissance purposes. They're here collecting and gathering intelligence, hyperspace intelligence. They're searching for clues to their origins and their fate, what became of them and their civilization. So yes, it's said that they're in Zeta and there's Project Serpo and these types of things, but it's also believed that though they're from some other planet, they're from that planet only in that they came here from another timeline and then chose those different planets as a base of operations. Because where they're really from is they're really from here on some timeline. Now, I know that sounds twisted and warped, but in this multiverse, in this continuum, when you look at it forensically and you analyze it on the level that it's being analyzed here and now, Andrew-d-basiago, Washington State, the number of UFO sightings in Washington has said to be the highest number in the United States. That is sightings in the U.S. Washington State has, on some time frame, been where there are and have been more sightings than anywhere in America. I believe in the world, it's Mexico. It's like Mexico, the United States, China, Russia, Africa. So there are these different key locations. I've even heard New Jersey. So Andrew-d-basiago and Project Pegasus, when you look at time travelers and or folks who say that they've been involved in these types of programs, deep black unacknowledged programs, there's a common denominator among the stories that are presented. And so when you look at Montauk Project, which I'm looking at here, it says, quote, "The Philadelphia-Experiment. The book's narrative is centered around the Montauk Project, which is believed to be an extension The book's narrative is centered around the Montauk Project, which is believed to be an extension or continuation of the Philadelphia-Experiment, also known as Project Rainbow, which supposedly took place in 1943. Sometime in the 1950s, surviving researchers from the original Project Rainbow began to discuss the project with an eye to continuing the research into technical aspects of manipulating the electromagnetic bottle that had been used to make the USS Eldridge DE-173 invisible, and the reasons and possible military applications of the psychological effects of the magnetic field. A report was supposedly prepared and presented to the United States Congress and was soundly rejected as far too dangerous. So a proposal was made directly to the United States Department of Defense promising a powerful new weapon that could drive an enemy insane, inducing the symptoms of schizophrenia at the touch of a button. Without congressional approval, the project would have to be top secret and secretly funded. The Department of Defense approved. Funding supposedly came from a cache of U.S. $10 billion in Nazi gold recovered from a train found by U.S. soldiers in a train tunnel in France. The train was blown up and all the soldiers involved were killed. When those funds ran out, additional funding was secured from ITT and Krupp AG in Germany. The experiment comes to Long Island. Work was begun at the Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. Work was begun at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, New York, under the name Phoenix Project. But it was soon realized that the project required a large radar dish. Hello, Signals, Jim Creek, radar dish. Hello, Yakima Firing Center. And installing one at Brookhaven would would compromise the security of the project. Luckily, the U.S. Air Force had a decommissioned base at Montauk, New York. What a fucking coincidence. Not far from Brookhaven, which had a complete semi-automatic ground environment, SAGE Sierra Alpha Golf Echo SAGE radar installation. The site was large and remote. Montauk was not yet a tourist attraction. Right, like Jim Creek is a tourist attraction, and water access would allow equipment to be moved in and out undetected. Equipment was moved to Camp Hero at the Montauk base in the late 1960s and installed in an underground bunker beneath the base. According to conspiracy theorists, to mask the nature of the project, the site was closed in 1969 and donated as a wildlife refuge park, with the provision that everything underground would remain the property of the Air Force. What a coincidence. Although in reality, the base remained in operation until the 1980s. Right. And so I'm supposed to assume that the military would shut the base down in the 1980s? Right. Just like they shut down Jim Creek. Right. Key parts of the original book. Experiments began in earnest in the early 1970s, and during this time, 1. Some or all of the following are claimed to have occurred at the site. The facility was expanded to as many as 12 levels and several hundred workers without anyone in the town noticing the tons of building materials or hundreds of workers required. Some reports have the facility extending under the town of Montauk itself. Fucking of course, dude. Homeless people were abducted and subjected to huge amounts of electromagnetic radiation. Few survived. People had their psychic abilities enhanced to the point where they could materialize objects out of thin air. Stuart Swerdlow claims to have been involved in the Montauk Project, and as a result, he says his psionic faculties were boosted, but at the cost of emotional instability, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other issues. Well, that can happen. Experiments were conducted in teleportation. Well, I've seen the CIA declassified information about China working on its own series that is set of teleportation wormholes. That's right. The Chinese government has been using wormholes and accessing wormholes. That's declassified information now. A portal in time was created which allowed researchers to travel anywhere in time or space. This was developed into a stable time tunnel. Contact was made with alien extraterrestrials through the time tunnel, and technology was exchanged with them, which enhanced the project. This allowed broader access to hyperspace. Wow. I'm saying wow as if like I didn't already know that. An alien monster traveled through the time tunnel, destroyed equipment, and devoured researchers. The tunnel was shut down, and the creature destroyed. Stranger things. Stranger things. Stranger things. Hello, people. Hello, folks. Stranger things. Stranger things. Stranger things. I said it 6 times. Shall I say it again? An alien monster traveled through the time tunnel, destroyed equipment, and devoured researchers. The tunnel was shut down and the creature destroyed. Man, you already know if there's one such creature, there's another one somewhere. Mind control experiments were conducted, and runaway boys were abducted and brought out to the base, where they underwent excruciating periods of both physical and mental torture in order to break their minds. Then their minds were reprogrammed. Many were supposedly killed during the process and buried on the site. Well, I hate to say this, man, but that would account for a lot of the missing persons back in the 1980s, man, on those boxes of on those milk cartons and whatnot, man. Listen, I'm being serious. On or about August 12, 1983, the time travel project at Camp Hero interlocked in hyperspace with the original Rainbow Project back in 1943. The USS Eldridge was drawn into hyperspace and trapped there. Now, between you and me, I heard that the metric on that is for 40 years. So recursively in the space-time feedback loop and the recursive feedback loop of the space-time continuum, at that juncture, when the USS Eldridge was suspended in hyperspace, I've seen the number placed at 40. Now, that's in flux, but 40 was the relative observation. And the feedback loop, not only 1943, but there's also a time marker in 1983. Yes, 1983. So 40 years. Well, that would make, okay. So now it's understood. Now I understand even more than I had before. Okay, the USS Eldridge was drawn into hyperspace and trapped there. Two men, Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron. By the way, we have to make sure that what Al Bielek experienced, what he saw, does not take place the way he saw it. Two men, Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron, both claimed to have leaped from the deck of the Eldridge while it was in hyperspace and ended up after a period of severe disorientation at Camp Hero in the year 1983. Here they claim to have met John von Neumann. What a fucking coincidence. A famous physicist and mathematician, even though he was known to have died in 1957. Damn! I'm telling y'all, man, somebody out there, man, some of y'all folks think this shit is fake. I'm saying to you, man, I don't fucking think it is. Von Neumann had supposedly worked on the original Philadelphia experiment, but the U.S. Navy denies this. Of course they fucking deny it. Maybe they just don't know it on this timeline. Staff from Camp Hero site traveled to the USS Eldridge and shut down the generators, causing the ship to return to Philadelphia Naval Yard in 1943 and causing the time tunnel to collapse. Meta-humans and experiments and special serums to create individuals were tested there. After the experiments were completed, or the destruction of the facility, depending on which book you read, the facility was closed for good. All the staff were brainwashed, shot, or sworn to absolute secrecy, and all records destroyed. According to some stories, research continues at the site to this day with enhanced security. I'm going to leave it at that. You all can look up Montauk, New York, Camp Hero, and you can see where it's a park now and the facility is supposedly shut down.